This is my honest review of Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia after living here for 30 days. Now I've got to say I've really enjoyed the city so far. It's actually been a little bit surprising compared to what I've heard from some other people that have traveled here, and today I'm going to share with you my honest review. Now let's get started here and talk about value and cost of living. Now the number one reason most people want to live in Malaysia is because of how good the value is. What I mean by that is your dollar really does go quite far, and you can get really great places if we're talking about renting an apartment, for example, for significantly cheaper than you can in most other places in the world. For example, right now I'm renting an apartment. It's $2,500 per month. It's way overpriced compared to the actual price of this unit if you were to rent it for 1 year. I think that price is around $1,400 per month. But the point is, if I were to try to rent an equivalent apartment in a place like Dubai or Toronto or even a place like Bangkok, it'd be significantly more expensive. And if we're talking about Dubai specifically, this place would probably be $4,500 per month. So immediately you get really good value when it comes to accommodation, which is going to be the largest expense for most of you. And if you just spend even $500 per month, you can still get a really great place in a good building that's not sketchy, that's not too small, which I think you can't say about a lot of other cities. With that in mind, prices for things like food, accommodation, activities, all of that varies depending on where you go, but you definitely can survive here super cheaply. And I know that if I was on a really tight budget, this would definitely be the place that I would want to live because I could have a great quality of life for just $2,000–3,000 per month. Now, with that in mind, another thing that I appreciate about Kuala Lumpur is that since it's such a large kind of major urban city, you have the ability to spend a little bit more money and still get decent value from that. For example, if you want to go to a really nice 5-star restaurant, you can do that. They have that option here. If you want to go and rent a penthouse apartment for $5,000 a month, you can do that and you're still getting really good value for the money that you're spending. So overall, I really don't think you can beat this place when it comes to the value and what you get for your money. And now let's talk about kind of the overall lifestyle and vibe of this city. So if I was going to describe this place in just a few words, I'd probably just go with chill city. The reason for that is it is a city, got access to all the things you want in city lifestyle, but it is really chill. It's much more laid back. It's not super in your face. It's not as kind of hustling and bustling as a lot of the other cities that I've been in. And if you compare it to a place like Bangkok, it just feels so much more tame and chill. For example, when I was in Bangkok, I can remember the first few nights kind of going out alone, walking around the streets, and it's just pure insanity. You know, you've got people coming up to you, trying to sell you stuff. You've got all these different vendors. There's so many people. It's super busy. You can really feel kind of the energy of the city, and there's just madness going on everywhere. Whereas here, it's pretty much the complete opposite of that. You can walk around. Yeah, there's some people, but it's not super busy. Even when you go on something like the LRT or the transit system, it's not super overcrowded. There is a little bit of traffic like you're going to get in any major city, but overall, it just feels a lot more relaxed. Now, with that, I think you get a slightly older crowd, kind of more families. I definitely noticed there's less tourists here, or at least less, let's call them white people or foreigners like me in the city, and there's less of kind of a younger crowd. Now, there is some areas you can go to and party, and you can kind of get that nightlife experience, but it's definitely not going to be comparable to a place like Bangkok or even Bali, and honestly, that's totally fine. I found living in Kuala Lumpur, I find I'm a lot more focused, I don't have as many distractions, I've gotten into a good routine, and I could see this being a decent place to live long term, especially at a slightly older age where you want to do, less activities, kind of settle into more of a routine, and again, get really good value for your money and be in a relatively safe place that's just, pretty chill. That's really the main way that I can describe it. A lot more laid back and chill than a city like Bangkok. And if we go to the other end and we compare it to a city like Singapore, it's kind of just like a slightly less clean version of Singapore. It's not as sterile, it doesn't have all those crazy luxury buildings, it's not as expensive, obviously, to live here, and it's kind of a nice blend between the two places. Now, last thing for this section here, I will say there's a lot of cultures here in Kuala Lumpur, and I think in Malaysia in general. You've got a lot of Chinese, you've got a lot of people here from India and Bangladesh, and actually while I was walking around KL, I noticed most of the people here are not Malaysian. Now, that's probably just KL, and I think if you go outside of there, you'll see more of the Malaysian population, but just be aware of that. It is pretty multicultural. You've got a lot of people here from different places, and a lot of, immigrants kind of working here, places like the Philippines, again, India, Bangladesh, kind of popular regions where a lot of people are coming to Kuala Lumpur. Now next, let's dive into the weather. Now I will say it is definitely hot and it is extremely humid in this city. From what I know about it, it has a pretty stable temperature throughout the year. Obviously it varies by a few degrees, but generally on any given day, you're going to expect it to be above 30 degrees, extreme humidity, and I can say that I'm not someone who handles the heat super well. So for me, even walking more than 10 minutes, I'm usually sweating a little bit. It's pretty hot. I want to get into some aircon, and the weather's been okay. It's not unbearable, but it's probably not something I'd want to live with year round. Now that said, I'm coming from a place like Dubai, so right now this is definitely better than Dubai would be, because Dubai could be probably 40 degrees today when I'm making this video, but Dubai during the rest of the year is actually a very, very pleasant temperature where it's, 25, 26, 27. It's not quite as humid as a place like this. Now another thing to consider, you are in Southeast Asia, so you are going to get that rainy season. I'm here right now and I'm making this video in September, and it has rained quite a bit. Probably every other day it's raining. It hasn't been a massive inconvenience and it's not super heavy rain, but that is definitely something to be aware of if you compare this to a place again like Dubai, where it pretty much doesn't rain the entire year unless it floods like we had happen at the beginning of this year. Anyways, as well as that, one thing to note is that it's not really super sunny here. You kind of get that gray sky, that more cloudy, overcast environment, whereas in a lot of other places, even like Bali, you get significantly more sunshine, and that is something that I've noticed here. My mood kind of does get affected by the amount of sunlight, and here it's kind of feels a little bit more depressing than some of the other major cities that I've been in. So now let's get into transportation. Now here, unlike a lot of the other major cities in Southeast Asia, motorbikes aren't really a thing. Now delivery drivers and a few people on the roads are driving them, but they don't have, for example, motorbike taxis. That means if you want to get around, you pretty much need to go by public transport or by car, or I guess by walking or taking some of the kind of electric scooters they have around the street. Now for me, this has been slightly inconvenient because a lot of times I just want to get in a car, I want to be in air conditioning and just go where I want to go. But here the grabs take an extremely long amount of time. And again, you have to take a car. So if you're trying to take them at peak times, like probably between 4 to 7 p.m., it takes a really long time to get a car. Sometimes I've waited 20, 25 minutes just to get one. And then to get anywhere, there is a significant amount of traffic in the main city center, so it can take a really long amount of time. So that said, if I was living here, I'd probably want to have a car. And I don't really love that. I like to be in cities that are a little bit more walkable, or at least are faster to get around in. For example, in Bali, when I order a motorbike taxi, it takes at most like 5 minutes, and then someone's there and they can kind of navigate through the streets even if there is crazy traffic, because they can weave through all of the different cars. Now with that in mind, the public transport's pretty decent here. I haven't gone super far on it, but I have actually been using that significantly more recently. So they have a bunch of different lines. They have one, I forget if it's called LRT, MRT, whatever the name of it is, but it's kind of like up in the sky, like you can see the track. I'll try to play some footage of it, and that's been pretty fast because there's a station about 5 minutes from where my Airbnb is. So I just walk there, get on the transit, go to wherever I need to go. Super cheap and super convenient. So from now on, I've kind of been using that, and that's avoided the kind of grab issue that I've had. Now, other than that, they do have some electric scooters. So those have been fun to kind of ride around when I want to go somewhere and it's maybe a 20-minute walk. Pop on one of those and you can be there in about 7-8 minutes, so you're not out in the heat for too long. Other than that, I will say that I've noticed people here drive kind of crazy. There's been a few times where I've actually been quite scared at the way that some people are driving. They're going like extremely fast, not stopping at lights, not stopping at stop signs or crosswalks, and I haven't experienced that in a lot of other Southeast Asian cities. So I would say the driving here is a little bit insane. You have to be a bit careful, and there's a lot of places where the sidewalk isn't great, and it's been a little bit scary sometimes, especially at night, to be walking down the roads and having people just absolutely ripping in their cars. Last thing I will say is that when it comes to transportation, if you're going to be going to other countries, KL is a really great flight hub. They have all kinds of connecting flights. They have direct flights pretty much everywhere you want to go. It's super cheap to go practically anywhere in Asia, and you're really centrally located, so you get a really good location when it comes to flying to other Southeast Asian places. Even going to a place like Dubai, they have direct flights. I'm going to be getting on one shortly, and overall, I think that's definitely something to consider, kind of the proximity to the rest of Asia there. So moving on, we can quickly touch on food. Now the food is decent. It's not the best in the world. It's definitely not bad. You have a lot of different food options from many places around the world, and they can be super cheap, especially if you're going out and buying things like street food. Now with that in mind, you also have a lot of luxury options, a lot of great restaurants. I've been to a few of them here in Kuala Lumpur. And the last thing I will say is that the really inconvenient thing about the food here is that food delivery takes a really long time. Now maybe I'm using the wrong app, but I've been ordering on Grab, which is what I use around Southeast Asia. In most other places, it takes maybe 20 to 30 minutes on average. And here I would say the average food delivery time for me is over 60 minutes, even though I'm not ordering from places that are super far away. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe they just don't have a lot of drivers. They don't prioritize that, but it is pretty inconvenient, and it's kind of led me to doing a lot more cooking. So maybe that's a good thing. I will say when it comes to buying groceries, super cheap, lots of options, no issues with that. And now let's move on to the next section. So now I'm quickly going to list off a few things that I really don't like about this place, or at least that I miss compared to some of the other places I've visited in Southeast Asia. Now the first has to be the lack of beaches and ocean. Now in Bali, you kind of get that more like vacation lifestyle. This is kind of directly what I'm comparing it to. You can just get up and in 5 minutes you can be at the beach. Now there is beaches and ocean in Malaysia, and I'm sure a lot of them are actually quite beautiful, but they're pretty far away from Kuala Lumpur. It's not something you would go to every day or every few days. It'd be kind of out of your way to go and visit one of those places. Another thing that I definitely notice here is kind of the lack of sun. I actually looked it up. The sunlight hours here are significantly lower than a place like Dubai, which is kind of what I'm used to, and that does definitely have a pretty large impact on my mood. Now, other than that, it's just not quite as convenient here as a lot of the other places that I've been in, mainly being, food delivery. Grabs take a really long time. There's a few other things as well in terms of the convenience factor that I don't really like. And then lastly, I will say it's not super clean. So although it is cleaner than a place like Bangkok, for example, if you go a little bit outside of the main city center, it does feel a little bit dirty. It smells a little bit. The air quality is not great. Not a massive thing, but definitely something that I've noticed here compared to when I've been in places like Singapore or places like Dubai. So with that said, let me talk about a few things that I do really like about this city. Now, the first is that it's deeply integrated with nature. There's a lot of trees. It kind of feels like you're in like a jungly city. It doesn't really give you that concrete jungle vibe, and it's really nice to walk around in, and you just kind of get that sense of nature that you miss in a lot of other places like Dubai, like Bangkok, like just some of those other major urban cities. Also, there's a lot of activities here. Some people complain that Kuala Lumpur is kind of boring. To be honest, I don't necessarily agree with that. There's a lot of different things that you can do, especially if you do a little bit of research. There's great malls. All the activities are pretty affordable. And if you're willing to go, about an hour out, you can go to a place like the Genting Highlands. This is a place that I went with my girlfriend recently. Super nice. They have a casino there. They have a bunch of great dining options, a ton of activities. They have this huge like theme park thing. It's kind of like a mini Disney World they've got going on. And they have a bunch of other really cool cities in Malaysia that you can go and visit. I think being in Kuala Lumpur, since it does give you access to a lot of places that are close by, it is a nice location, and you can go out and do like a nice weekend trip or a week trip somewhere else in Malaysia. And since it's so close to a lot of other places in Asia, you can go and have your fun in Bangkok or go and do a luxury vacation in Singapore and then go back and kind of live a normal average life in Kuala Lumpur, which I really do like about it. Another thing is if you go outside of the main city to some of the other areas, you can experience some cooler weather. For example, in the place I mentioned, the Genting Highlands, it's about 10 degrees cooler. So if you do want to get, kind of that nice mountain breeze, relax a bit and not be in super humid weather, you can go up there and you can experience that, which was quite nice when I went there. So overall, my conclusion has been I really like Malaysia. It's a great city. It's super affordable, lots of value. I don't know if this is a place I'm going to consider as my second home. If you don't know, I've been kind of searching around and finding a place that I might want to stay during the summer months in Dubai. I do like it, although it's not quite kind of as lively or vacation-y as I might want. What I really want to do is kind of focus for about 8 months in Dubai, really grind, then kind of go and have more of a relaxed summer where I'm doing things like going to the beach, maybe learning how to surf, just enjoying, a few more activities and relaxing a bit more, as opposed to living in a place like KL where I think this is where I'd want to be to really focus and kind of lock in and get in a good routine. Sure, there's a lot of good stuff to do here, but it doesn't feel as much like a vacation as a lot of the other kind of Southeast Asian cities do. It doesn't give you access to as many activities or as much fun. And again, everyone's going to be different and you're going to be looking for different things, I think, at different stages in your life. So maybe later on, this would be a nice second home. So anyways, that is it. If you want to know how much I spend in 1 week living in KL, then check out this video right here. And I look forward to seeing you in another one.